All right, I'd like to open up the special village council meeting, August 28, 2020 at 2 o'clock. The time is 2:04. We have quorum with Mayor Pro Tem Vandenberg and myself, and I think we have Councilman Bob Marcolis on the screen, Zoom, and we're waiting for Jamie to be dialing in, but we do have a quorum so we can move forward.
I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to allow Councilman Marcolis to participate remotely.
As well as Jamie?
Well, whenever he gets on there, we'll do that then.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
You're the only one voting.
You can vote.
Okay, that's right. All right. All right. Thank you all for coming today, and it looks like we have a lot of interest from people in the community, which is great. Love to see that, and I will just open it up by thanking the two individuals that are with the properties that we're talking for coming in and sharing with us their thoughts. I think on Zoom we have Scott White, I believe, but he may not be on Zoom, but he's on at least our...
Yeah, he's on the phone.
On the phone.
This is on the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry. First off, we'd have to adopt the agenda as presented.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Again, welcoming the two individuals and obviously all who are joining us here. We also have Mark Curtis, who's one of the landowners or representative of the landowners that of the property that we're talking about. So for those that are just listening in, what we are talking about, and this is just quite frankly at 50,000 feet, we've always said ideas are free, and we talked a little bit, had some preliminary meetings just to see what some thoughts were on some things, and we're looking at the roundabout that I guess goes off to, is at Newtown and goes off to Waxhaw Market Road. That's the roundabout, and just be on the other side of that is there's I guess 3 legs, and on the other side of that is a Crane property, or the Crane General Store as we know it from a historical standpoint. That would be represented by Mr. Mark Curtis, and then we have Scott White, the house to the left of that. So we're looking at that particular area, and again, all we're doing is 50,000 feet, coming with ideas. I shared with them that what we were talking about is a potential, a likely potential, and what we're trying to do is kind of hone in, and I've asked them to come back with some ideas of what they would like to see happen. And I think we even have some drawings. A lot of times people like to see pictures of what the look we're going after, and what we're actually talking about. So I don't know where to send it. If Rohit, you have anything you want to say about the area that you're talking about, because you've met with the landowners as well. So
Sure. I don't really have too much to say other than I'm gonna screen share a bunch of different pictures and examples of the concept that exists in other places, mostly in North Carolina. And so I'll be setting that up right now.
okay.
I'll have some copies over there. Get them.
So
Yeah,
again,
I
if
think
you,
this is good. I think we
Yeah.
need to start here.
if you look at the whole property, maybe you can put the outlines of what we own currently. The corner that
Copies.
is that right?
So yeah,
Okay.
Actually,
Why is there a
to the
building
right of
there?
that, isn't it?
I don't know.
No, it's
Used to be a house there.
there.
Oh, there used to be a house there, yes. So that's actually part of it, but it's also that whole corner. So give us a minute for us to pull up a map, so we're all on the same page.
I pulled up everything we need, but apparently not. Alright, great. So here we are. That's the property we own. The Crane store is right next to it. across from the roundabout, and Scott White's house is next to that. And that's where we're starting the conversation.
And we also have the property on the corner. So we have those two little pieces, the piece
There.
that's highlighted there, and also that whole corner on the other roundabout that goes off to Marvin School Road.
There.
So, again, my idea has always been just because you get land free doesn't mean that's where automatically town hall goes. It's got to fit in. And for those who are not aware, we've actually had consultants at no charge to the village. What's the group's name?
CPNI.
CPNI. I always forget their names, but they're a group of individuals who volunteer their services and talk about, you know, how you kind of create these downtown districts and how you involve, you know, whether it's landowners, land that you own, or other landowners. So there's a lot of discussion, and I don't believe the official report is out yet. Is that correct? Is the official report?
We have the report out. We're about to put it on the website very
It's
shortly.
just really
Okay, I encourage you
Sorry, on the
to
website.
read
Oh,
it.
it's on the website?
Yeah, it's on the
Okay.
website.
I encourage you to read that and see what they came up with, given everything we're talking about within our town. That includes the park, and the roundabouts and what we see. And there's a lot of discussion. Again, nothing is set in stone. These are just ideas. And in the last presentation I was in, via Zoom, they had presented some, I think Mr. White had presented some photos. I think you had some drawings,
Yeah.
Rohit, of what potential we could be looking at and how this would all kind of come together, if at all. So, and maybe you want to start with what that fourth leg
Yeah, sure.
looks like and stuff, and talk about the utilities that are in the way there, that type of stuff. So.
Okay. So the concept of potentially having some activity behind the Crane store and the White House would inevitably lead to us needing to have some kind of driveway access. And so, you know, this can be independent of a village center, but a fourth leg off of,
I'm gonna interrupt you.
Yeah.
I need to make a motion to allow Councilman Lyon to participate remotely.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you.
Sorry,
So
Reggie.
No problem.
You joined the meeting at 2:12? Go ahead.
Okay, no problem. So the idea here is that a fourth leg of the roundabout could facilitate driveway access to both the Crane store and the White House, and a potential town hall, village hall that would go in the rear of these properties. I don't know what kind of
Because if the Crane store and the White House are commercial, they can't use what they currently have, is that right?
It would almost certainly have to be a right-in, no, it would certainly have to be a right-in, right-out if it were allowed at all.
On both of them, or just,
Scott White's might be far enough.
okay,
But it's possible that the Crane store may not even be allowed to have that commercial driveway there.
because
It's,
Too close to the...
it's a little close to the roundabout. It's
Okay,
about
all right.
It is close, but it is further than the Weddington entrance.
Yes, that's true.
From there,
That
so-
may have been grandfathered in from already existing.
well, you would know
but-
that, what has DOT told you? Or would that
We
come
haven't-
from DOT?
We're literally, we haven't gone
Got that,
anywhere.
okay, okay.
You know, we just know that we bought it to preserve it, thought ultimately that it's an appropriate, like a coffee shop or something like that. And, I mean, my business works with the DOT all the time. I've had informal conversations. I don't think we're gonna be precluded from an entrance. You know, they're not gonna do that, but I do think they'll insist on a right in, right out.
Got it, okay,
So,
okay.
if the next
Yeah.
circle comes in, that obviously isn't that big a
It's
deal.
easy, right, correct.
But if they don't come in, then it's
Or,
not
yeah,
so-
I gotcha,
Right.
okay. Thanks for coming in today, bud.
And by the way, if I might interject, when I was talking to him last week, I think the original, Jamie was at this, you know, the idea of both landowners have an interest in the historical nature of the properties, obviously the Crane building, and wanting to preserve as much as they can when we're talking about this, and that goes for Scott White as well. They both talked about that, which was, I guess, from my perspective, very good to hear that, you know, we have landowners that aren't just trying to maximize whatever they can get, but their interest is in preserving it, so we appreciate that, so.
If I could add, I mean, I know Scott's on the box, so he probably can't hear half of them, but his family dates back to this area for like 100 years. I don't know how many generations. Scott, can you hear? Okay.
Yeah, I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been here since like 1758, something like that.
So he obviously is
Union
very
County,
passionate about
Mecklenburg
that.
County, Chester, Lancaster, York.
Great, okay, awesome. I didn't mean to interrupt, Rohit. I just wanted to,
No, it's
fine.
I wanted to understand why we would do the fourth leg.
And Rohit, you have talked to DOT as far as a fourth leg.
Yes, DOT would be fine with us doing it. Of course, we have to pay for it, but they'd be fine with us doing that. And there's some utilities here, but the leg could avoid those utilities.
Okay.
There's also some steep topography there, but again, you can build that up to have that driveway.
Yeah.
Okay.
And quite frankly, as we're discussing this would kind of, I guess, cross into the potential public-private type agreement, which, you know, we still need to learn about how that process needs to take place if it were to go forward. But in the last meeting, I think I mentioned that I would like the landowners maybe speak on behalf of because they had some drawings and they looked interesting, you know, and everything we talked about was interesting enough to have this special meeting to invite all of the council members so we can actually have a discussion specifically just for this.
Right.
And I would ask them to come back with ideas of things that they would like to see at their particular property. So
Right.
either,
Do you want to bring up that
Yeah.
drawing and we may?
Scott, can I bring up that drawing?
You have it, right?
Yes, I do. Okay, all right.
I
Here
mean,
we go.
Scott, as you guys know, I mean, this is what he does for a living, so I'll just let him kind of walk through the design principles.
Yeah.
You're not going to want to hear from me about it.
Got it pulled up.
okay. So
You want to walk through
Can
what
he
you're
see
trying to
it?
achieve there?
Yeah, he's watching.
Okay, okay, all right.
You want me to do that?
Yeah, I
Mark?
think it'd be
Yeah,
better for
okay.
you.
Well, I'll just first of all start with the impetus behind the design was the town contacted us. Mark and I got a call from Rohit, said they might be interested in looking into options to put the town hall on our properties. And, you know, so I took a Sunday afternoon and thought, well, let's just see what could happen. Is there a sensitive design there that maybe perhaps a partnership, a conversation about how it might could fit on there and work and still offer Mark the opportunities he's looking for and me the preservation and perhaps opportunities I'm looking for in the future. So I don't think I can put a cursor on this, but so Rohit, can you put it on the, you see, well, first of all, you see on the left, the far left, the church, and that's Marvin Methodist Church. And then you see my house right to the right of that, facing Newtown. And then you see the Crane store, or Mark's building, right there, exactly. Mark and I had talked about, maybe some sort of light commercial that he would like to do, a coffee shop that might have some small kiosk-type buildings, in the back of it, that would be sort of hidden, but might have some sort of light retail opportunities, art galleries, things like that could be charming and destination-oriented. Then when the town contacted us, we'd been talking about this. We hadn't done any planning. We just had conversations about what the future might look like for both of us and for Marvin. And we knew Marvin had hired, I watched your Zoom meeting. I saw you stop in front of my house, and I saw it proposed as a town hall, and so I've seen all these developments. So I thought I'd take a chance, and let's just see how that might work. And so, Rohit, if you could show where the town hall is. So what I did is put about a 4,000 square foot building, which was what I understood y'all were looking for. Turned it into a real traditional house, and Rohit can probably show you that little drawing a little bit later. Some friends of mine, Allison Ramsey Architects, are very, very skillful. This is one of their buildings, and residential, but the floor plan could very much be used for a town hall, and it would fit in terms of the architecture, perhaps, or something like this. I just wanted to get an idea out there to start with. So what I did is centered that on a green, which would take away the two entranceways to my property and Mark's property. The driveways would be gone. So this is proposing a different use for both of those properties, perhaps. So that's a central green. So the town hall is lined up on a civic green, which is a public green. It's not a private green. And then, of course, we put parking in the back. That's probably more parking than we need, but you usually plan for the maximum you need and then scale back or show how you might add to it over time. When Rohit said they were interested or could bring a road in off the roundabout, that makes sense to bring it in that way. So the parking is totally hidden from Newtown Road and from the street. So, with landscaping and the whole thing, that little compound, Mark's got his, he's still thinking about what he wants to do in terms of how the disposition of buildings and things like that. But if you notice one thing about them, I tried to block all the views into the back courtyard. So you have a store, and then you have a building, you have some tables out there, and then you have a building. Well, you have those tables, but also tables to the left of the store there. And you have a building above that blocks that view. So you basically have an interesting private courtyard of retail and public gathering activities. There's just potential for this design, which is totally schematic. It's 8 hours of a Sunday afternoon of mine. That this potential direction it could go on. So that's sort of it in a nutshell.
And how many, maybe Rohit, you know this answer, we're talking about how many acres when you these two property owners plus what the little piece that the village has, we're looking at approximately how many acres here?
So Scott's property is 1.5, the Crane store is 2, that's 3.5, and then you combine it with our 4.
So again, we're not doing anything yet, and just for the record, the people that are looking at this at the first time, that whole corner we had proposals for a town hall and possibly a farmer's market, which still could potentially a farmer's market, something like that, but when we got the bids, they were close to twice what our budget was. That's one thing. The second thing is when you take all that acreage together, I think we compared it to over on, is it Providence Road where that church is, and I think you showed
Yeah.
what potentially how much space you can get for 5 acres or whatever that we're talking about. If we head over to that just to see it, and again, I'm not talking about what that building looks like. I'm just saying what you can fit in something like that, and just to get a perspective of what 5 to 6 acres could yield. Is that where you're heading to?
Yeah, but,
You're in the wrong area.
You gotta go south.
Yeah.
Wait, which church are you looking for?
The one that's just over by the across from the Harris Teeter, right in there. Yep, that's it. So on that, we can get up above. That sits on how many acres did you mention?
I think it's 5 acres, but they've got pads for additional space, actually. And I want to say it was 20,000 feet.
Yeah, so we're obviously not talking anything that big, but I just remember clearly when I've been at meetings and all the meetings as I'm trying to gather this information together is one of the key things to make things successful is you kind of have to encourage gathering spaces where people want to go. The last thing we want if we were to do something is have empty stores and them all boarded up because they're not getting the traffic. Obviously, we've got the traffic that comes through there, and what I liked about it is the parking's kind of hidden in the back. Our town hall is not necessarily right out there in front, and you know, and it's, you have a lot of natural foliage in there to begin with, and it's what you cut out of it. So I guess my next question is to both Scott and Mark, is what you guys have thought about specifically. If you've given it any more thought of what you'd like to see. I know, Scott, you mentioned something about the potential of your property, and maybe talk about that a little bit, or what your thoughts were.
Well, I presently live here, and but it could be a bed and breakfast. It could be a restaurant. It would have to serve. You know, it would have a kind of a limited scope of purposes that it could serve. Maybe a spa. I don't know. But I just like to see it preserved into the future, and you know, adapt it to a use that makes sense, both economically but also in a preservation sense.
Scott, do you want to add any additional buildings like we're talking about on, at the Crane store?
Well, that's Mark. That's what
that's
Mark
Mark.
would be doing.
No, I
And
know,
again,
that's what I'm
y'all,
saying.
you have to remember
but I'm
this
saying,
is a
are
She's
you,
asking whether you would want to on
Just
the
like-
residual parcel that you have.
yes.
Is he talking about?
you mean in addition to like what you're seeing here?
Yes.
Well, if you look at my house, I preserved, you know, this was going to be a bed and breakfast or a restaurant. You see a green, a garden in the back, and those would be like perennial borders on either side. That'd be like the hedge you see on the right and the left would probably need to be about 7 feet tall or something, so that it's a private experience. You got a reflecting pool, and you got a chef's garden in the back. They're
Perfect. Okay.
really, with this plan, I don't see that I can add any buildings to
Okay.
it. I mean, you're kind of locked in unless I put something at the back where that garden is.
Okay,
And then that's my property in the left-hand corner that is cut off by the power line right away, and that's pretty much, you know, there's not much I can do with that.
Okay. I was just asking.
He's also
Sure, absolutely.
One of his design tenets, you know, was you want to put your building in the back, but you want a visual corridor, like
Yeah.
a big common green that kind of gives it some prominence. And another thing is he's got some trees there that were really, you know, we think would be important to preserve. So that, you know, you see how it's sort of slightly angled, and
Yep.
I mean, it's not exactly linear, but that was by his design. He's also got some steps in there to handle elevation changes. And, you know, again, I mean, he said it already, this is a Sunday afternoon, or probably a long afternoon, of just trying to get something on paper so that we can discuss, like, well, you know, I think Rohit was, you know, we just want to talk about some ideas, like, what is it principally that we
Yeah.
want?
Yeah.
Principally, to
Well,
answer
the
Joe's
green
question.
you see here is very much public, and it's sort of a diminishing perspective. It's wider at the front than it is at the back. It's at an angle because the Crane house is at an angle, and so is the store. And both of them are angled. I mean, they've been that way for, you know, 100 plus years. So, so there's sort of a diminishing perspective on that, and that is very much a public space. I would say of this plan, it's kind of Williamsburg meets Leon Creer. If y'all know those that person in that place.
I've been to Williamsburg.
Yeah. Well, look up Leon Creer sometime. He's
Okay.
quite a guy, quite a planner.
So as we look at this picture right here, and I don't know if Rohit, you can do this, is superimpose what property is on the white and what property is on the, that's what White's property?
Roughly.
Roughly?
this is White's
Okay.
Property.
Something like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then this is.
Okay. Okay. So that gives us an idea, and then obviously the parking would be a shared parking space for all, whether it's during the week with town hall, used in the evenings, easily used for accessibility with the path that's behind there, accessibility to the corner, which we haven't even decided what that could be yet. But this kind of brings everything together. You got history on really with both properties and then kind of putting the town, and I don't even think CPNI had recommended this, this wasn't even on their radar when we were, when they had presented to us. They ideally thought that we could be right here and be able to take this building, whether we lease it and stuff, and we've exhausted those efforts just for the public to know that we've reached out to the church and they're not interested in selling, which is fine, and they're not interested in a long-term lease. So again, we're trying to exhaust all options as far as properties that are kind of right in the center of this district or as close to.
Yeah, the CPNI's recommendation in general, they suppose in a village center, the village hall should be as central to it as possible if we were making a new one. But then they said, okay, so if it can't be in the middle, then see if you can use the church, and if you can't do that, then see if you can put it beyond that. But basically the site that we have now was their last choice recommendation because of its being on the fringe of that district.
And I know I may get in trouble for saying this, but I know that it was presented to us, and again, it was their recommendation.
Right.
When they talked about the park and how decentralized it is, and there's no access to it right now, and potentials for that, which were, eyebrow raising, if you will, because they suggested we sell it and use the money for something else and put a park somewhere more centralized, which I don't think we've even discussed yet. That was just their recommendations. Again, ideas are free. We're looking at the big picture here and saying, so that quite frankly, for me, was off the table, but what I'm trying to do is focus on the landowners that are central to the district that we are looking at here. And given the fact that the 3 quotes we got, the lowest quote was close to double, I believe, to what our budget was. This is just another option, if you will, and actually kind of bring things together, which maybe kind of kicks off this district. So a lot of things need to be done, I think, which includes getting the land use plan done. And I guess, Mark, we haven't heard much from you as far as what uses you thought. I know Scott talked a little bit about his property and some of yours. Do you want to share anything with?
I think I mentioned last time,
Pull that back up.
our desire, number one, is preservation of the old Crane store, and kind of anything we do beyond that has got to really just play some kind of tribute to the history of the area. So, not interested in a Family Dollar or a CVS or anything remotely like that. That design that's there, Scott listened to my crazy ideas. I told him I'd been inspired really by, I think we shared that property down in Bluffton, and really, that it's similar only in that, you have a very old sort of mainish street, which is Calhoun Street, and then you have buildings that were built to match the vernacular of the front buildings and create a sort of patio and community space. And if you go there on a weekend, and admittedly it is more of a resort area, so you get a lot of tourism, but that little driveway area, that's a path leading to the back, and it is just packed with, they have a little bandstand, and they have tables, and they have a fire pit, and you can see some of the umbrellas there if you zoom in. That's sort of our, so Scott took that, and we had talked about potential just almost kiosk-like buildings. Do I know that kiosk buildings are financially feasible? No, I don't, we haven't gone into it that closely, but uses, love to have a coffee or ice cream or things that just people kind of gather around, maybe a sandwich shop, maybe a brew pub, maybe things that gather people. But again, probably if you took all of the buildings that Scott drew on that, it probably doesn't add up to one of your homes or anyone's home here. So, it's not a lot of square footage. I think, in terms of a way forward, you talk about your land use plan. I think we'd be very much in favor of some kind of FAR limitation, frankly, for the whole area. And then give some, and then also some kind of design. We've got to have some meetings of the mind on design. And, you know, as far as Scott and I are concerned, anything that goes on those properties, we have to know that they're going to be in keeping with the design of what's, you know, what's already there.
You said FAR. I
That's
don't know
floor
what that is.
area ratio, and it
Okay.
has to do with the density.
Yeah, so,
I'm thinking
uh,
0.1 preliminarily.
so you want to say what point?
0.1.
So 43,560 feet an acre, 0.1 would be a 4,300
Square foot building, yeah.
4,356 square feet of floor area.
Okay,
So that's pretty low.
yeah.
But not offensive. You know, it might be a little higher, but it's not offensive. I mean, typically you go to Atlanta, where I've done a lot of work. It's not. I mean, you'd be talking about somewhere 50 miles outside of Atlanta is 0.1. But,
Okay.
yeah. So that's the. Well, you're from Atlanta, right? So
I went to school there, but I'm from here.
oh, okay. So, but yeah,
He ran for mayor of Atlanta.
Yeah.
You
Did you know that? He ran for mayor. I think he got 12 votes.
I got some competition here. All right, all right,
next
man.
election.
Please take this job from me.
It pays so well.
Yeah, well, that's why I'm in for the pay. Yeah.
But you know, if you go back to Scott's, you know, drawing, the way he's got it arranged, the key for me is it's not so much, oh, I like a building here, but I don't like a building there. The Crane store already exists. I'd love to see outdoor seating. I'd love to see some connection between, even if it's one building, I'd like to see a connection between the two buildings, which is what the Bluffton pictures really show. If you looked at pictures of that, it doesn't have to be a big project in order to create sort of a community feel.
Yeah.
And I will say that as I've gone through this process in the last 7 years as mayor, and I'm learning about this, quite frankly, now with how retail is and brick and mortar doesn't exist like it used to, the average retail space today is 1,500 square feet. So when we're talking about a 4,500 square building, that could be 4 different,
Yeah.
small boutique type shops that, whether it's a flower shop in one area, a sandwich shop, a coffee shop. I mean, there's a lot of ways to do it, but the average space now, I mean, everybody's, shopping online, that kind of stuff, but when it comes to gathering space and what piqued we've always talked about some sort of farm to table type restaurant. When Scott mentioned about having a garden in the back, I'm like, wow, how fitting for that. And we're still open to the farmer's market concept, which could be used in the corner. When we talked about the uses of that, where I'm always accused of wanting to build when I'm actually trying to look at that whole corner and keep it as open and spacious and rural type feel rather than putting buildings on it and stuff. So and this is a way to hide a fairly decent sized town hall and tuck it in the back and create some sort of, again, destination gathering space, whether it's foot, bike, car. You have access to it, and it's kind of becomes the center of the town, since that's quite frankly going to be the center of the roundabouts, if you will.
And selfishly, from our perspective, we'll look at it. I'm going to look at it both ways. One is, if we give up direct access, that's going to be a problem for a lot of potential tenants, a lot of potential users. On the other hand, giving up that direct access off the road, we're creating pedestrian ways. And so now you have pedestrian traffic on the weekends, you get people feeling safer to walk, you got usable outdoor space, whereas right now, if you put anything outdoors, it's going to be cut up by driveways. So there's a lot of positives to us. Second, utilities. If we build something in the back, we can work something out, then it's going to need utilities. You got sewer in the back, water in the front, but someone's going to have to drag those utilities. I think so. it's a number of advantages, and I think it's a safer way. I mean, if you really want to generate sort of that pedestrian village feel, you got to figure out how to get vehicular traffic in and out of anything. Even if you were to do it on your corner there, which is fine, you got to figure out how to get people in and out of there. You want to have a farmer's market, how do you get people in and out, and then how do you park them? You know, because we're a vehicular-centric world, and so so I see a lot of advantages for working together on it. How it all works, I'm not sure, but you know, I think.
Real quick, Rohit, what you just did, that's the sewer tap-in, correct?
Well, that's roughly where the sewers go, but I was following the preserve trail.
Path that you have.
Okay,
Yeah.
but where, the tap-in, closest tap-in for sewer, because we would need water and
It's in the
sewer.
back.
Yeah,
It's like-
this is roughly where the sewer comes
Okay.
to,
Okay,
and you would tap into the sewer.
Okay.
Just like that.
terrific. And the water is,
The water is in the front.
okay,
The water goes along Waxaw Marvin Road. This is where the water comes currently,
mhm,
and we would tap into it either at this intersection here or at this intersection here, whichever one's cheaper, probably.
which eventually needs to come to play because we're talking about putting foliage in these
Yeah, irrigation.
irrigation
Yeah.
in those areas anyway, so we need a water source, which will be probably needed depending on how this goes, so. And I didn't need to interrupt.
No.
Jamie, oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, I think we're all, it seems like everybody has a sort of the same desire in terms of what we ultimately want to see, which is maybe some very limited service retail, you know, maybe some event type things and some gathering areas. And that's really
Yeah.
kind of it. And it's not, you know, who's building a nursing home or anything like
Right.
that, but
Well, I think that's what people get scared
Back and
about,
forth.
about the uses and stuff, and
Absolutely.
we can, my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rohit, is we can control the uses
Yes, yes.
of what actually can and can't go in there, and if there's some sort of agreement going in. I think this could be a cool spot, a
I do
cool
too.
location that's kind of the heart of our downtown district. It's not center, but, you know, I mean, things, you know, one thing they're not making anymore is land, and this is an opportunity, and all I'm just for the record is trying to expose the council to, and anyone who's listening in, is the thoughts and ideas that we're coming across. If we don't exhaust these ideas, then, you know, hey, in all fairness, we're probably, and none of these work out, we're probably back to the corner, probably, you know, spending what we have to spend to put in what we've talked about putting in for it. But I think the council, for the record, is, this council is like, we need to get this ball rolling, and we would like some sort of action, whether it's, you know, with who we've talked to in the past or who we're talking to now, or what we can do. I think it's the council's direction that we'd like to start this process. I even think we have a timeline set that we've established for this kind of stuff, so.
Was Jamie and Bob, what do you guys,
What are your initial thoughts?
yeah,
Jamie, you want to go first?
Well, the only thing I'll say is, this is the epitome of killing two birds with one stone, because let's take a step back and say, we're just gonna build it on, we're gonna do a village hall on the corner where the sign was that said we were building a village hall. That doesn't help anyone else that's on this call at all. It's there, but really what does it do? This again would be killing two birds with one stone, because we could use that other lot as a farmer's market, a pavilion, a gathering place, but then also come and use what we have here. Also have Village Hall behind that as kind of a centerpiece to all of this as well. I think it's a great plan. I think it's just everyone coming together with a mutual interest in it being successful. My only question, and it's kind of the elephant in the room, is how do we make this happen from a land use standpoint? Because we've got, a portion of this that is ours. Or I say ours, is the village, and a portion of this is one property owner, and a portion is the other property owner. So how do we bring this together? Whether it's to again get back to the mutual piece of this, are we utilizing more of one person's land, and how do we swap that out? Is it a swap? Is it a buy? Is it an easement? Whatever the case may be.
Actually,
That's my 2 cents worth right now.
I could just add to those thoughts though. So I do have some experience with something very similar project. It was in Atlanta, but we created a condo regime. So in my mind, you have 2 potential options. One is a condo regime where we take, here's the land, and we create units, land units. And so Crane Store is on one land unit, the Village Hall is on another land unit, and the Crane House is on another land unit. So you got basically 3 condos, they're land. Now, then we have a POA that gives guidelines and everybody has input on architectural standards, maintenance standards. I mean, because all that has to be set up. If we're going to be cooperative, doesn't matter whether you buy it or lease the land, we got to, we're still married. We got to, who's going to make sure the trash gets taken out? Who's going to make sure, who's in charge of sweeping the parking lot? Who's going to clear the parking lot? What if a tree falls down? All those things have to be talked about and agreed upon, costs shared, how do you share the costs, who pays what, when, all those things. But so that's one method of doing it that I'm familiar with, and the other one is just standard subdivision, which you just carve up, and you could lease it, you could buy it. We would have to combine lots between Scott and I. But I mean, it's not it's not rocket science. You combine 2 properties, carve it up into 3 properties.
And I know I mentioned in our last discussion that, when we were just talking on the Zoom call that, that 4th leg and the cost of that. And maybe Rohit, you can talk a little bit about how the land is when you were showing me where the best suited area, and that's why it's positioned like this, and you don't have a undulation. There it is. As you look there, as the lines, my understanding, are closer together, the steeper the slopes are and the more challenging it is. So one of my questions is, boy, what's it going to cost to put that 4th leg in and go all the way around the back and build a parking lot? And is that something that it's a private-public partner share when it comes to the parking and maintaining and all those things, is how that agreement works out, which I guess that's
the devil in the details.
Right.
The parking clearly is going to benefit all 3 buildings. To what degree and how much of that parking is really superfluous to, let's say, the Crane Store, or superfluous to let's say, a fancy restaurant. You could argue about that later, but that building a spur off of a roundabout, I mean, you mentioned 0.1, you may have to make it like 1.1 or 5.1 in order for 2 parcel owners like us to pony up anything substantial. I guess that's never going to work in terms of, I don't envision, first of all, I'm quite certain the town wants never to see what would be required to build on those parcels in order to substantiate putting in, whether it's an access road, a private road, a drive, whatever the standard is, it's going to be expensive. And I think I said on the last call, put myself in your shoes, I don't see any way this is being less expensive. I mean, I applaud you for looking at it and taking a hard look at it, but I can't imagine a way of it being less expensive than the retaining wall you were talking about. Some of you obviously have some obstacles on that other parcel, but to me, it's the more expensive of the 2 options for sure.
That being said, is there a potential, and we haven't even talked about this, but instead of the 4th leg, is there a way to the access to be off of Marvin School Road, and you come in and you go behind and go in that way rather than a fourth leg for the roundabout? Because I know there's some challenges in there, but and I don't even know if that's doable or not to come in like that, or if that's going to be less expensive or
I
more
wouldn't even feel like
expensive.
that, it goes straight across the back.
There's a stream there, so it'll probably be cheaper to go around the stream.
Yeah, but then you're like just putting a road in the middle of where we could have a dog park and
Yeah.
amphitheater.
Okay.
Yeah.
food
Just
truck
thinking out
Friday.
loud, I'm just trying to
Well-
think that
That's true. I mean, it would be a little more expensive to put the road here, but if it saves the space for the public, things, then that's probably worth it.
Well, I hadn't thought of it before, but you know what, also, you've got that half-acre parcel to the right of the Crane store, and doing this activates that to a degree. It's got a lot of topo. I mean, it was given to the town because it has so much topo, and it was like, yeah, nobody's ever gonna build it. However, if you have if you were to create the rear access, you may actually have some opportunities with that. Plus, we're already talking about building parking, which
Right.
is obviously the other dilemma if you ever wanted to use that.
Scott, your thoughts on that? Just looking at that as far as an access.
Well, I think somebody else said it. I don't know. You do have and I do show that little stream where I thought it was on my plan because I know it's there. You can see it to the right there. So you're crossing it that way. You're crossing it both ways, but what you do, I think somebody else said it, you do activate your corner property if you do that. So you have killed two birds with one stone. You now have a way into your corner property, and that could certainly be developed in some way, but you also have access to this property. I'm not as crazy about the road coming that far in, but I guess it's a possibility. It certainly needs to be looked at. You got a lot of topo in there. It's a little bit deceptive, but when you walk it really drops.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's still.
I will tell you a little history, because I did stick one building on your property to the right of the store. Just kind of trying to look at all the options, which is very doable. One side of the building becomes a retaining wall, and then it's got the plaza on the top. But that's where the old Marvin blacksmith shop used to be. My grandfather used to work in it some as a kid back in 1916, 17, 18. So that land had a little blacksmith shop on it, believe it or not.
Wow. Okay.
That's cool.
Good to know from a historic standpoint. Jamie, do you have anything else you want to?
Hey, poor Bob.
I know, Bob, we're getting to you. Don't hang in there, buddy. Any other comments, Jamie, or questions?
No, again, mine would just be, how do we sit down there? And I think just some ideas were kind of thrown out. Is just, how do we mix the land? How do we put that together, and who takes, and really kind of get down to the details of it. Because I love the concept. I love how this looks. We are killing two birds with one stone. That other piece, I think, is just a huge addition to have access back into all of this. And I just think it works with, but the finer details. I think the hardest part, quite honestly, was getting the parties involved to say, this is my vision, this is what I believe it should look like and how it should look and feel. That bridge seems to me to be kind of already hurdled, which is a huge positive. But now we just got to get down to some of the details of how the land fits in together and how that works.
Okay. Bob?
Well, first off, I want to applaud Scott and Mark to what Jamie was saying. In my past experience, this is where it all begins. When you have property owners and entrepreneurs that want to make a thing happen, and that's how it starts. In projects that I've been in the past, it's always been an established downtown, where you're trying to renovate buildings or trying to refresh the area, and you're trying to convince property owners this is what they need to do and buy into. Looking at it, I'm very excited. I'm excited by what I'm seeing. It reminisces what I've seen in Pawleys Island years ago before it got so built up back in the 80s, as well as the Barefoot Landing that was over in North Myrtle Beach, as well as going up north to Kennebunkport, Maine. This is the kind of thing that you create a lot of excitement, but more, what I love about it is that it keeps within the flavor of the area of what we were talking about. You know, I never thought this vision. I kept thinking we're on a linear plane. We're always building off to the side of the road. And I never thought about, we never had that opportunity of going back and deep and bringing shops into it as well. To Jamie's point, we put two birds with one stone. You've got excitement. You can visit the hall on business, and you can also have pleasure at the same time. So I like it. Of course, it's at a 50,000 foot level. I'm looking at it. You got to get to the details, but I applaud Mark and Scott putting this thing together. I think this is real, especially yourself, Scott. You're the one kind of
That's all Scott, not Mark.
Mark's the idea guy.
And this one, so make this happen somehow.
Mark's the smart guy. I'm the designer artist. One thing I will say about this is that it is a place. There is a there, as opposed to it's not really a suburban model, but because everything in Marvin now is really suburban, and it's a shame. I mean, you have berms in the backs of the houses, facing the road, and things like that. This is. You drive into any traditional town, you drive up to Monroe, and as you come in on Newtown Road, and that becomes whatever that road is in Monroe, all the houses face the street. Mm-hmm. Everything faces the street. So this is actually a real place, and obviously it's a schematic design, but it does represent a real place.
That said, Scott, and I know this was a drawing, if this is what you do on a Sunday afternoon, I don't know what you could present if you really put your mind to it, because it's impressive when I look at it. I certainly couldn't do anything like this, but is this something and for all those listening in, we are having a town hall September
15th.
15th from 6:30. Mm-hmm. Which will be presenting the land use plan before we approve it. It by then should be approved by the planning board to be sent to us, and then my understanding is it goes to the public and have them one last look at it and for comments. That will be at the town hall meeting from 6:30, I think, till 10 o'clock is where we have it down at Forest Lake Church in Waxhaw. That's a scheduled event, but I'm looking at something like this is because we talked a lot about, pictures. A lot of times people are better with visuals and what, thing. Is this something that we could potentially use as an idea for the community to see, again, you get people behind something like this and, and again, I'm not saying because we're not, I don't think we're planning on taking a vote or anything like that, but again, this is just ideas and stuff, but is this something that we could use at that meeting?
Might have to think about that for a little bit. What do you think, Mark?
I think it's hard for people to envision, you can wave your hands around and describe things without something to look at. I think it's hard for people to really imagine it. I mean, I don't see what the downside is. I want to be clear. We're not suggesting even that this is the plan and here's what's going to go here and here's what's going to go there. This was really just between the two of us and 98% Scott, an idea for how it could work. So
yeah,
I'm
good with that as long as it's presented as, this is a schematic idea, and a point of conversation. I would approach it that way.
It illustrates what our values are, I think, collectively. Right. I mean, because it sounds like we're pretty much aiming at the same sort of ultimate this is what it's gonna look like when you drive through Marvin. You're not gonna see, well, anyway, it doesn't matter what. So I think it shows what we are for,
Yep.
not necessarily, oh, let's start building this building over here and let's start doing that parking lot over there. Just, I think to get some level of buy-in, or maybe someone has a better idea.
Well, in addition to this, if we can get some of the pictures of, what's that the town,
Bluffton?
Bluffton and stuff like, again, a lot of times I know, especially for, people close to me, my wife, they like to see pictures of stuff that, what are we actually looking at? What is this?
Yep.
How's the feel of this all come together and stuff? And that's what, again, they're just ideas. There's nothing to
There
get
you go.
up in
Yeah.
arms about. That's where the public input comes in, and that's I see it based on my past experience as half the battle is public buy-in, public input. It is a public-private thing, so we'd probably have to get legal involved to find out, all that. Rohit, you talked about. You had talked about a funding mechanism from, when we talked about, and just again for the record, this council is discussing owning from roundabout to roundabout, all three roundabouts and the road in between, and controlling that so we can control the speed and do a lot of things that, that create a downtown, and that's one of them. Even if it gets to a point where we're discouraging people from speeding, that would be a good thing, I would think. So it's because we get a lot of speeding on that. But as we're talking about that, you talked about a funding mechanism and stuff. So what?
It's boring.
Oh, it is.
Well, not that Jamie or Bob asked me my opinion, but I'm gonna give it to you guys anyway. I like this idea a lot. I think it 100%, maybe not 100%, but 99% is what we're looking for. Something's, town hall to be, setback prominent. I love that green, lawn area in the front. I love the idea of having, the smaller stores. I think that's awesome. When Scott, you said maybe an art gallery, I wrote down pottery, since we have so many local
Potters.
Potters.
I didn't know pottery was big here.
It is, yeah.
I'm from Seager, where the big potters in this
Okay,
day.
well, so I wrote down pottery. Anyway, I really, really like this. I'm with Jamie. what's the next, we're all kind of envisioning the same thing. What's the next step? Do we need to talk to legal about how we kind of figure out the land, whether it's the condo situation or if it's just like a neighborhood, not a neighborhood, you said a subdivision.
You'd almost have to put it like an HOA, POA
Yes,
type agreement
correct.
together, and
Then do we need to talk to DOT about how much that leg's actually gonna cost versus coming in the back where we then are able to access the corner property? Mark, I agree with you. I don't think this is gonna be any cheaper than putting it on the corner lot, but if we do this, then we have the corner lot to do
Yeah.
additional things
Oh, yeah.
for the community, which is what we're really looking to do.
Yeah, for me, it was just all cards on the table. I think it's the more expensive option. Putting just a building down at that other
Sure.
corner is not, it does this has been tired and out of date for a long time. It solves a lot of problems from a functional standpoint. It does absolutely nothing from creating a village center standpoint.
Correct.
So it's a matter of how much does the community want a community center, and how much are they willing to pay for it, and how
Right.
much, and what,
Right.
And so, and without knowing what a road costs, and Rohit had talked about like a special tax district, I guess just assume from one roundabout all the way to the last roundabout. I don't know.
Yeah, we still have to work out the details of that, but it's a potential that we could apply a special taxing district here, then take out a loan or establish a bond, and then so we can collect the surplus, whatever the shortage, the money we don't have, over the course of 20, 30, maybe 50 years.
Yeah.
So we don't have to worry about you guys putting a 5-FAR development just so that we could get the money for it now. We could collect it over decades.
But I think we need to start I think we're all in agreement that this is something that we're all interested in pursuing. So like, what's the next step? Like, I think we need to just continue to move this forward. If there are other things that we should be talking about now, let's talk about them now. If there's stuff that we just don't know the answers to, then let's let staff start to gather that information. We can do this again.
We can start with the landscape architect to go ahead and lay it out there and get some general high-level cost estimates of what they think it's gonna be. They would basically take Scott's little visual, put it into their system and make it legit, like, that's not legit, but make it to where it's, he is a landscape architect. So they could actually put numbers to
Okay.
dollars on it.
Okay.
So,
And then,
It seems to me like you really do need to know what the cost is. You're gonna need to hire an engineer and figure out what,
Yeah.
yeah,
look at the topo.
And our
sure
engineers
it's-
can work with
our
our landscape
AMT can
architect.
work with that, right?
And
No,
then-
yes.
I mean, that's a
AMT.
barrier
Sorry,
to entry, right?
Our engineer is AMT, but ESP is our engineer for the village hall.
Is our
Okay.
civil engineer.
Okay.
so guys,
I've lived here,
go ahead, Bob.
no, that was
Oh,
Scott.
Scott.
No.
Oh, I'm sorry,
I mean,
Scott.
I've lived here for 24 years. I know this piece of land. I did look at the topo. So this is a very efficient plan. I will say that about it. It doesn't waste anything. One thing about your road coming in from Marvin School Road, it might be a good idea to envision that entire corridor leading into here, because you got a lot of open green space. I mean, at the very least, there's some stormwater detention that's going to have to take place in that green area. But you've got a lot of somebody mentioned a dog park. I just worked on a marina project, and we've got numerous dog parks, because dog parks are the thing, but you've got big dogs and little dogs and closed-in spaces and open spaces. So, envisioning that whole corner, I know there's an adjacent property there that's owned by somebody else, and who knows, they might could join in as well. So you could perhaps envision the entire corner at some point in time and kind of make sense of it all.
Scott, would you say, I didn't know you were a landscape architect, would you say that,
Well, I'm a designer, but
Okay.
basically that's what I do, and a planner.
okay, would you say that it would be feasible for us to present your kind of schematic there to our landscape architect and see if they can actually put numbers to the two options of the roads?
Oh, well, you mean like more of an engineering, like a civil
Yeah,
engineering?
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to do that. You're either going to have a civil or an LA that's capable of doing engineering calculations. Absolutely. And that topo that you're showing, that's not exactly, there's a margin of error with that. So at some point, the entire thing would have to be surveyed so that you have accurate
Right.
topo.
So I can check with Urban and see if they can put numbers to the schematic there. They would more than likely, they would have to enter a contract with them. They would take his depiction, put it in their system and see if they could come up with numbers. We could present the two different road options to them and they could come back hopefully with some numbers. If they can't do it, then we can get AMT to do it.
Okay.
Either way, we've got to,
So-
we've got to enter
you'll
a
work on
contract.
that. You
It's
can
a
also-
civil engineering exercise is what it is, to get
That's what I was
those,
saying.
to get those things figured out.
So,
And then you can talk to, sorry.
go ahead. It's all right.
Then you can talk to Chaplin about whether doing it like a condo or like a subdivision would be better, Christina.
Yes.
And then, the physical town hall building.
I was gonna get to.
Obviously, you guys would want, input into how everything kind of is cohesive and looks together. So Scott, I'm gonna assume, and you know what happens when that happens, but I'm gonna assume that you like the picture that Rohit put up as town hall.
No, I just had to start
Oh.
somewhere, and
Okay.
that,
Oh, no,
those
you
are friends
guys.
of mine, and I think that's a really nice traditional building.
Yeah,
But no, but I will tell you this: it would have to be, and obviously you'd have to hire a really good architect, a traditional architect,
The white.
to design something that obviously starts with a floor plan, what y'all actually need, and then pull up elevations from there. And I can make recommendations for you, but it would really need to be a traditional building and,
Okay.
and have a lot of charm to it. Sorry for going.
That's right, Scott, we talked about that at the last meeting, and I tend to agree with you. I'm not necessarily a big fan of the whole look that they came out of when all the process of what
The barn?
the barn was going to look like, and the barn being at town hall and stuff. So I think you mentioned that.
These are the types of pictures we were going back and forth
Right.
that
right.
I had pulled up and said, this is more
Sure.
what I'm thinking, but we never, because it was gonna be so expensive to change the
Right,
plans. But
but-
what is Christine asking?
So
you
the
for?
board and batten
Can you
one,
pull up the current plan?
it's somewhat resemblance of it, but,
This is an older
no,
one.
the
That's
one
not
that,
current,
the
sorry.
very last one that Urban came up with.
Yeah, I have to look at it.
Okay.
Who is your architect? Who are you working with?
John Urban,
Okay.
So just while he's trying to find that, what struck me, and I'll share this with council, is as I looked at this and I've driven by and I'm kind of look at it and how it looks from the street as you drive by. And one of the cool things how this is laid out, you got this big green area and the town hall sits in the back, and it's kind of like government's there, but it's not seen. It's sitting in the back. It's used as it's needed to be used. The parking's back there. We have limited time that we utilize that space, and if that parking for the rest of it is for evenings during the day, in and out people, I just think it becomes the start of a destination of many little pockets as we're trying to connect all these greenways and roadways. This is something you could ride a bike to and go get an ice cream at a place like this that's in there and stuff. So a lot of ideas, a lot of great, and again, with whoever said it before, is like, we're not just building a building and then it's like, okay, there's got to be a lot of thought into this. And the fact that we've got history on sort of both sides and landowners that are, want to preserve, and that's an important part of this whole thing. It just puts us, and I think when you guys or the public hears Mr. Gene Stowe, who we've invited to talk about the history of Marvin, and the reason I like that building too, that we're looking at right there to the right, the Bull Point, is very similar to what used to be in between the two churches.
Oh, the yellow.
And you think about that, it's now just right up the road and has been preserved. It's almost, and maybe we get to something that looks just like that. I don't know.
That would not be that hard for them to take our existing, you slide the front door over to the middle, you can, that would not be that hard.
It's essentially a box. It's a very classic
Yeah, as long
box.
as the front is,
Got it.
we're gonna have some non-boxy just because we've got, some meeting rooms and stuff, but that to the right is the types of things that I had pulled when we were back and forth trying to find.
I understand.
It would just fit in. It would just fit in with the area,
Which is much better than what else we do as far as, how we come to that.
Yeah.
So,
You want it to look like it's always been there.
Yep.
You want people to come in there and say, "Oh wow, I didn't realize this was back here."
In terms of the other things that could be done in order to sort of further the discussion, and we need, well, you in particular need to know the cost. Like, what's that going to cost?
Yeah.
And to the degree to which you're willing to bear the brunt of it. It's costing more, but we're creating this. And the other thing is, we talked about before, what are the uses? Well, I'm sure you guys have probably talked about that forever, but to get it down on paper, what are the uses? We talked about FAR, sort of codifying, because I'm assuming that when you're not creating zoning just for two little land parcels.
No.
You're trying to do it for the whole area,
Right.
and you got to think through all that. So, but I think that would move things immeasurably toward, like, what are we really talking about in terms of how this is going to impact us as landowners and everybody around us as landowners.
So, and that would be, I guess, what they call spot zoning, which was not
Yeah,
necessarily, we don't want to do that, but however
We're
is.
ready to approve the
we-
land use plan, which has this all as a commercial district.
Right, which is
so-
what we're talking about, that gets done first, that's the first step. But help me out because I don't know the answer to this. So we changed this district to a different zoning type that allows for certain uses. Can we, and I don't know this, so I'm asking this is, can you go across the street and say, no, we don't want that use here? Is that use all similar in the whole
It
strip?
has to be like, these are the things that we will allow.
Okay, just want to make
Not,
clear on
this
that.
is what we won't allow, but these are the things that we will allow.
Right. So we got to get I remember a developer coming to us and say, well, what won't you allow? I said, no, we're not going down that road because we don't know what we don't know down in the future, what type of retail places pop up and all of a sudden, well, it's not on your list. But we should get to a point, and this is to council, of a very specific list of what we would allow in these type of shops, assuming that I use the term, how many square feet you would get per the acreage and stuff. So.
That's all in the ordinance creation of the village center district.
Yeah,
There's a
yeah.
whole process behind that.
Yeah.
Right, and I just want to pull up this. This is Marvin Gardens' individual zoning district, and in it you have a whole section that has a table of
There it is.
uses. Yeah, here it is. And obviously the village center district would be even more refined than this. But this is the zoning district. This is the regulations for that development.
Right.
And they can only come and look at this list and put those kinds of uses in the other buildings that are gonna be in that site.
So so you're gonna talk to Chaplin, you're gonna talk to AMT, ESP, whoever you need to talk to for looking at this and getting prices. Rohit, I would start working on this list.
Mhm.
You've heard us all throw out things that we are interested in having, things that we're not interested in having, and then you come back to us with a list of what you think maybe an all-encompassing of what we want, what we don't want, and then you can bring that to us.
Yes.
And just remember that, I'm thinking, no wireless providers, no.
Right. This
like,
is Marvin
I
Gardens.
know,
is
that's
more
a bigger
traditional,
one, right, so
top
think
one.
smaller.
And again, if we get to a point where the landowners demand that they want something, not that I'm saying you would or wouldn't, but, and we're saying, no, that's not gonna be, that conversation may end there, and it just goes from there. But I think we're on a lot of the same page in the talking we've done in the past and today that, I think we're sort of all on the same page of that.
Hold on, I'm sorry, before I forget,
Go ahead.
Christina, can you also talk to Urban about and show them the picture? And then
Yes.
say, because I know they've got to make some changes anyway because of,
So there's a couple things. First, we didn't have uses on the agenda, so we can't really go into a whole lot of detail about uses. But we can have that as a conversation at a work session, and you can bring that back up. But that is part of.
ideas, Village Center, ideas.
But that is part of, Rohit's got a consultant to come in and do some ordinance creation when we get to that
I
point.
know, but I'm saying there's
We'll still have to
ideas.
do a lot of the legwork.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
a consultant will make sure that a district does have everything that we want and nothing that we don't want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so the next steps for us in terms of costs are gonna be to find out what a contract's gonna be for the landscape and the civil to go in and figure all that out. And we'll have to enter a contract with them, so I can get that prepared potentially for the next regular meeting, and y'all can decide to enter that
And then
contract.
if we get that and we all agree to that, then we just need permission from the landowners to, I don't know who that was.
Who is that?
Marvin James.
I'm so sorry that Bruce tired on the phone.
Somebody's yawning
My
on it.
goodness.
But we'd obviously need permission from the landowners to have access to the
Yeah.
property and that kind of stuff, so. But it sounds, and I don't know if we have to go to a vote or anything, that we're all, the council seems to be on the same page. We are missing Andy, so we'd have to kind of fill him in, and maybe Rohit, you can spend some time if he comes in and show him the schematics and that kind of stuff. Anything else that?
Can I throw one more thing in about the architecture?
Yes.
And I saw your suggested uses, I get that. But one thing in new urbanism, I was a consultant for 15 years with Duane Platter Zyberg, landscape architects and planners. And one of the things we did on charrettes, in fact, that's where I met Bill Allison and Cooter Ramsey, is we always had architects on board who would draw up prototypes. And usually we would reach, like when we did the Black Mountain project that Rohit showed a minute ago, Cheshire, that was all mountain architecture. When we work in the low country, we would draw from low country entry. When we worked in the Piedmont, we would draw from Piedmont commercial and residential architecture. I don't know if you've ever thought about it. One thing that this kind of does, if you build something traditional, the town builds something traditional, and you develop more, and I like one of your members there said, it's not what you can't do, it's what you can do. Good codes should be enabling. Good codes shouldn't have their hands out forcing you away. They should invite you in. But one of the ways you do that is asking people to join in the architectural vision that you have, so that even those other properties, and that's one thing, if you show them how to do it, they'll want to join in because it'll be successful. To make a place, you've got to have different hands involved. You don't want the same architect doing it all, but you've got to have some kind of architectural standards, a typology, if you will, a language that is utilized by everybody who sort of joins in. And it's not prescriptive. It actually helps everybody be more successful if they're willing to play along. Not everybody is. Somebody's going to want to put which you're obviously not going to allow. Some people think brick, CVS buildings are great, but that's not what the look you're looking for here. If that makes any sense to you, I just thought I'd throw that out.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. That said, any other comments that anyone would like to?
The only comment I've got, and Kim, you might be able to identify it by seeing it. Behind the property appears to be that residential area. And I'm assuming, is that Innisbrook?
No, Preserve.
Preserve.
Do you think, I'm just saying, do you think there would be issue coming that close to a lot of those 3 homes I'm looking at?
Show the path. Where the path
I don't think we're gonna be that close to it, because there's the walking path right there, Bob. Look where Rohit's, that's our walking path. So we're gonna be well inside that.
Oh, okay, all right, thank you.
Yep.
You can see the power line right away on that.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of green space back there. You won't be doing anything in there.
Yep.
You just got that one corner maybe.
Yep. But that's walkability from that neighborhood, which I think would be a benefit. Walkability from the other side of the preserve,
Yeah.
which would be a benefit. And again, I think we tap into. I think Rohit, you mentioned it the other meeting. Is once we start putting this kind of thing together and we move forward on something like this, there's funding available too, to a grant in the form of grants. Is it CRTPO? Or?
Yeah, CRTPO will give us money if we do something like this.
So that may help as part of that roadway,
Right.
quite frankly.
Right.
If we're gonna be doing some sort of, change of zone, business, that type of thing,
And
so.
the loop, where does the loop end?
Right now, it's
Somewhere-
it's
Somewhere
built.
around there, right?
It's built up to Yellow Jasmine Lane in the preserve. Of course, it's intended to come all the way around and,
Yeah. But,
yeah.
I was just gonna say, so, as you're looking at this, even if you didn't, let's say you decide, well, we don't wanna bring an access driveway from all the way on, what is that, Martin School?
yeah.
Instead of come off the roundabout, but, continue that sidewalk and connect those sidewalks to kinda activate the back where you,
Oh, go across the back
to
and
cut
back.
across the back, I mean, that'd
Yeah.
be a little prettier than walking along a roundabout.
Right. Yeah, and plus you can't, it looks, even though those roundabouts look like there's a sidewalk there, they're very particular, they said they're not sidewalks, they're really for the larger
Trucks.
vehicles to run up on
Run
and
over.
stuff, so they're really not meant to be walkable, which I don't know if the Joe public knows that, but,
If you walk that, you're risking your life, my friend.
yeah, but I think we would want to keep that, everyone away. I mean, there's a lot of talk about what that corner could be, where we're not putting up any buildings, whether they're, acoustical type concert events in the weekends and nice days and maybe food trucks right there. I mean, there's a variety of different things that could be done on that corner. I still like the idea of a farmer's market and something a lot lower intensive as far as buildings go. But what I like about this is a lot of this is hidden from the street. You don't even know it's back there until you take that fourth leg and drive back in there and see what, you know.
When you're hiding the parking.
Yeah.
Yep,
It's
you're
always
hiding
the
the
worst
parking.
part about suburban life is
Yep.
having to look at all the parking.
I think Rohit's shown you, I did put a sidewalk on there with a planting strip, which I might add, sidewalks and street trees make people feel safer as well. It gives you a buffer from the street. It just makes sense.
Yeah.
You could make those connections as well.
Yep.
I like it.
Very good. Well, if there are no other comments, I think we have some direction from council, and then we definitely want to put this on the next meeting for at least a discussion of what we've talked about, so you know, public can be aware of where we're at. And again, we're just exhausting all measures of ideas and areas, so we're making sure, and I'll just kind of leave it at that. I thought this was important enough to at least bring to council and say, hey, is this something that we could get behind, and more importantly, can the public can get behind it and something like that? Is that what they're looking for? I think it is based on the surveys we recently put out, so.
I like it. So
Right.
Scott, thank you so much for doing that. Mark, thank you so much for
Of course.
taking
Thank
your
you.
time and your time as well, Scott. It was much appreciated. Thank you.
And thank you,
Well,
council.
thanks for considering us. We appreciate your time. And I'll see if I can put some color on one of these, and that might help.
Ooh, that'd be pretty.
Yeah, color's always nice. We like pictures. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, sir.
And thank you, council, and for all of the community that has joined us today. Thank you for your listening in. And
Thank you, everyone.
And
I'll need a motion to adjourn the special meeting.
so moved.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Have a great evening.
You too,
Thanks,
thank
you
you.
too.